What saved you from your deep, dark depression? Story 1. At my lowest point, my sister called around to check up on me, pretending everything was all right and not face the facts that I was depressed and things could have gotten very dark. She'd done something that seemed so simple. She arrived back up about a week later with a dog for me, and it actually was life-changing. Story 2. My cats. Plain and simple. My cats won't understand when someone says they'll never see me again. And the thought of them running to the door every time there's a sound outside, thinking it was me coming home and their sad lil faces when it's not, keeps most of the depression at bay. Story 3. I'm currently going through the darkest period of my entire life. There's a line from the show, Severance. Every day feels like a year, and that is exactly how I feel. I feel I'm barely holding on day to day. It's awful. But even still, I like to tell myself that I am making a lot of choices, which I hope at this point are more habits than choices that are keeping me from truly going into a dark place. As bad as I feel now, I try to remember that there is a version of me that is not doing these things that is much worse off than I am now. Level 1 has been no alcohol, moving my body in some way every day, getting outside every day, even if it's just around the block, eating nourishing food, and drinking water. This has all really helped, and I don't want to think about how bad off I'd be if I wasn't sticking to these things. I am hopefully phasing in level 2 next week, which is getting back into therapy, journaling, and trying to get to sleep before midnight instead of staying up until 3 a.m. doom scrolling and feeling like shit. These may not sound like anything to write home about, but 3 months ago, I was literally unable to get out of bed or eat anything because I was too depressed. Story 4. Running till my brain tapped out. Jogging started as weight loss, turned into rage metal therapy. Science says exercise kills inflammation. I say it's me beating the pavement. Cried less, ran more. Going full yes man mode. Said yes to goat yoga, midnight drives, weirdo strangers. Novelty rewired my dopamine-starved brain. Now I've got chaotic stories and ride or die friends. Friends who storm my pity parties. Homies spam called me. Showed up with tacos. Let me ugly cry without fixing me. You're stuck with us vibes. Isolation. They're the reason I stayed. Therapy plus meds, zero shame, fought help for years. Got a therapist who roasted my excuses plus SSRIs, like glasses for my soul. Suddenly, the fog wasn't forever. Ditching social media, Reddit stays, deleted the gram, killed FOMO. No more comparing my dumpster fire to filtered reels. Now it's our aw cats and actual sunlight. Bonus, 10-minute meltdown rule spiral for 10 mins max. Scream, cry, doom Google, timer dings. Do one thing, chug water, walk, text a homie, progress, perfection. TLDR, outrun the darkness, say yes, let people love you. You're still here, that's a win. Edit, y'all made my heart grow 3 sizes, keep fighting. Story 5, stop drinking alcohol. For years, I thought I needed to drink to feel, which included me getting blacked out drunk listening to sad music and crying, which in return made me severely depressed and suffering for years. Once I got sober, I realized I was in full-blown addiction, and it was causing me sadness and depression. Now that I'm sober, my life is great. Addiction is Ed and will completely have you living a false sense or reality. Story 6. Friends, prayer, not allowing myself to get swallowed up forever in the grief and sadness. Burying our daughter was the most painful thing I've gone through. I wouldn't wish it on anyone. It's morbid maybe, but taking care of her headstone, keeping it clean, and putting some decorations out there is a form of parenting. It's the only form of parenting I have left for her. Story 7. I found an emaciated kitten by a dumpster. I was hanging on by a thread. I knew I couldn't care for a pet, and I was staying at a motel, so I just put food out for it. But later I went out and all the food was eaten, and it was still crying for more. I snuck him into the motel room, took him to the vet with the only money I had, and got him a flea treatment and fluids. I tried to find a no-kill rescue, but nobody would take him anywhere. He also has FIV. One night he curled up on my chest to stay warm. And then I knew it was me and him against the world. He's here now by my side and I adore him. I had to take care of him, feed him. He needed love. Then I knew I couldn't abandon him. I got some help I needed and things got better. He saved my life, literally. Story 8. The right therapist. I don't know what she did. She had a gentle way of making me realize that my life doesn't suck and that the possible outcomes could be amazing, and that the possible consequences for facing my fears were near non-existent and all in my head. I can't pinpoint anything, but she pulled me out of a dark place just by sitting with me and helping me understand myself. I never had much softness in my life, and talking to someone without worrying that they'd outwardly judge or explode on me for having thoughts and feelings was a wonderful thing. Story 9. This is going to be a very dark take. I became a widow February 2020. Left with our 2.5-year-old son right before the shutdown of COVID. I had been restaurant industry for almost 18 years at that point. and a yoga teacher. I had no choice but to face head-on the grief, which hit me face-on, with free time which I never had. I kept up with teaching online, had time to do online therapy which had been needed years before my partners, and that stupid effing blank space of time which most people can't talk about was my chance to learn how to heal. Then, when it came back to going into the world again, I stopped my therapy and ended up with delayed grief. Had to relearn a lot of techniques of being around idiots who had no empathy post-COVID. All in all, had to learn to find time for myself no matter the situation, was handed a lot, and laced up my best Doc Martens and kick ass every day to make sure my son has a badass mom who fought for her life and will always be there for him and his future. Story 10. This is a story I don't like to tell, but it's important to me, so I will. Back in my early 20s, I was in a really dark place. I wasn't on meds yet, in a less than great relationship, and overall, in a really dark place. I was so depressed that all I did was sleep. I hadn't eaten in days and had so little energy that rather than getting up to go to the bathroom, I was pissing in a towel beside my bed. I had been that way for I don't know how many days, and I was really ready to just lay there until I was dead. At one point, I moved myself enough to lean over and drink from a Gatorade bottle I'd had beside my bed, lemon-flavored. Not important, but I remember it, so it's here, for a while. I'm not sure why, but I looked into the bottle after I took a sip and I saw mold. I don't know why, but seeing that mold snapped something in me. I was pissing into a towel, hadn't showered in weeks, and just drank moldy Gatorade. I got up, threw out the towel, threw out the Gatorade, stripped the bed, took a shower. I walked into my mom's room and told her I needed help. She helped me clean up my room, find a psychiatrist to make an appointment, and made me some tomato soup. I ate and cried, and 2 weeks later, I saw my psychiatrist for the first time and started one of my now 6 meds. I'm doing much better now. I don't know why that moldy Gatorade snapped me out of it, but I'm glad it did. Sometimes the thing that snaps us out of the darkness isn't some big grand things. Sometimes it's moldy lemon Gatorade. Story 11. I was knee-deep in one of those negative thought spirals, and a tiny voice from the back of my brain wheedled, "Why are you so mean?" It was so funny having such a childish reaction like I was being bullied. It kind of shocked me out of it, and I started laughing. After the initial switch out of it, I realized I was being a bully. Every time the thoughts came back, I remembered that little voice, and it made me smile a bit. I sounded like a 4-year-old, but I was right. And when you think of that negative self-talk like a lame little bully, it was much easier to dismiss. Still felt like ass for a few more months, but it got me out of the danger zone and into the uptick. Story 12. You got to put things into multiple perspectives, from the most serious, if you will, to the most absurd. You have no other option but to keep going and trying to do whatever you can with whatever you have, and that it is convenient to be a realist in most cases. If you lie to yourself, you make things a bunch of times worse. Also, weed, video games, being good at being alone and being lonesome. Blessed by the fact that I personally do have meaningful people in my life that make it not so lonely. But again, I'm good at it because I saw when I was young that it was convenient for traversing this life. Also, my curiosity for the future and the interest I have in cutting-edge shit like UFOs, UAPs, AI, global politics. Not so much, but still in climate change. Source of despair. View life as a game, just play. No point in stuff like killing oneself if we are dying anyway. If you want to do something cool like fighting fascists, I know ridiculous, and giving your life to once more put out that fire. Love y'all from this little spot of the planet. We got this. We keep going till we can't hear. Story 13. I was in the process of attempting to take my life. I had tried hanging myself with several different things, including my belt, which broke and dropped me into my tub, tearing a gash in my shin. After that, I was creating piles of things based on who I wanted to give the stuff to, and then was going to start taking Tylenol. I turned and saw my cat, terrified, and stopped for the moment. I love him, and I know he loves me because he is a very affectionate cat. I sat down and pulled myself together enough to set aside my plan. I saw my doctor and got on a medication that helped. My depression has been there most of my life, mainly due to a childhood with a lot of abuse both at home and in foster homes. But at that particular point, it was heaviest because of a breakup I caused with someone I could have spent the rest of my life with. Ultimately, the breakup was a good idea, as she and I have been friends now for over 7 years, and the two of us married would have been a huge mistake. Story 14, I've had a few. Postpartum hit as pandemic started. My dog got me through. He died in 2023, cancer. I also had a miscarriage. I also left my religion. I decided to go start therapy. 2024 was a nightmare, 6 surgeries and 5 laser procedures on my eye in a year. Losing partial vision when that's been a fear doesn't do good things. I restarted therapy. My brother died unexpectedly. I decided life is too damn short to duck around. I got 2 tattoos, including a semicolon. I've started doing more things that make me happy. I'm now existing out of spite. Story 15, I'm still extremely depressed, but the best advice I can give anyone is to live life day by day. Thinking too far ahead and worrying about daily things is an extremely easy way to not live in the moment. I lost my dad last year. My fiance and I are separated, and she hates me but won't admit it. And she won't acknowledge me most days, even when I'm depressed. I'm drowning in debt and health issues, possibly heart failure. However, I still enjoy my hobbies and can laugh and be mesmerized by the simplest things. And I love cooking, so it's an easy way to distract myself. Most days I hate myself and ask for death, but then there's days where I know that life is beautiful, and even things like fresh snow and sunshine make me smile, or when my students make a joke to me or genuinely ask me how my day is going. It's a lot of give and take, but I just remind myself that maybe tomorrow will be better. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't, but as long as I can still feel some sort of emotions, I know things will be okay. Story 16, my sister. I had sent a text that was apparently just distressing enough that my usually unconcerned with me sister showed up at my house at midnight. I was planning to off myself that night, had the complete plan, was joyful about it, and I was pissed that she was there because it interrupted it. She finally convinced me to go to the hospital, where I was placed on a 72-hour hold which turned into a week in behavioral health. I don't wish that on my greatest enemy, but I did end up getting the resources I needed, and I was able to snap out of it. It was still a long road with a bipolar 1 diagnosis and so many medications, but 7 years later, it's well managed. My sister died unexpectedly and traumatically in 2022, and I've been horribly depressed ever since, but not ready to jump into the void. Story 17. I hear so many negative stories about taking medication for depression. This put me off taking them for years. Finally, I figured that I had nothing left to lose except my life. Medication saved my life. I'm putting that in all caps because stories like that are not stated nearly enough. I'm not a different person. Medication did not rob me of my personality or emotions. I feel like myself, but without the feeling of constantly trying to claw out of a slippery valley of darkness and despair. By the way, it does take some time to work. Don't be taking it for a couple weeks and then discarding because you're not all of a sudden super duper happy fun time. It's like a slow clearing of bad weather over the course of months until finally you realize that there is sunshine and warmth. Story 18. Ketamine therapy. I struggled for 15 years with medication-resistant depression. I'd tried every medication, hypnotic intervention, and TMS. The best they could do is keep me from doing something to myself. Every day I asked the universe to do me in naturally. A therapist I was working with told me about ketamine therapy, which I had never heard of. I started to research it, and it sounded like it was worth a shot. Oh boy, was it ever. It has completely changed my life. I am normal again. I didn't realize how deeply depressed I was until ketamine got me out of it. I dance around my house now. Friends have said I have a whole new aura. For the first time in a long time, I feel hopeful and positive about the future. I'm even applying for part-time jobs. Before ketamine, I was so depressed I couldn't hold down a job. The only downside is that it's expensive. Feel free to reach out with any questions. Story 19. For me, it wasn't a singular deep dark depression, but a cycle of hyper-focused and impulsive or depressed and dreading every day. And by far the thing that saved me was therapy. In therapy, I learned that I might benefit from a medication change. I was diagnosed with ADHD and learned ways to control my emotions and stop my anxiety from taking over. I'd been on antidepressants for years and thought I was cool with my less-than-ideal childhood, but becoming a mom brought out so many things I didn't know were there. I forced myself to do it for her because I didn't want to perpetuate the cycle. Also, thank you to my man for loving me and being patient AF. Story 20. The thing that saved me from going through with the unimaginable was that my dad co-signed on my student loans. I couldn't leave him with that debt. Then, just trying to be appreciative and grateful of everything I did have, and telling myself that any dark feelings are just a chemical imbalance in my brain, not to believe it. I'm now a very happy and content person, and people tell me all the time they wish they could be more like me, more comfortable in their skin like me, etc. Story 21. My cat in therapy. I lived for that cat. She was the best and let me cry on her fur. I saved her as a kitten and she saved me. I also had the best therapist. I saw her for 8 years and she remembered most of everything I told her. I don't know if she's still alive because in the final years I went to her, she had breast cancer and didn't tell me until I noticed she was losing hair. She was a child therapist originally, but took my case because I was 18 years old when she first started seeing me. She changed my life. She took my side, although previously I believed I was the problem. She once told me I had come a long way because when we first met, I wouldn't look her in the eye. Thank you, Helen. Story 22. My kids and wife. I know, sounds cliche, but it is the real legitimate answer. I'm one of the lucky ones that was able to convince a girl way out of my league to marry me, and she is out of my league because of what she does. I truly don't deserve her, and I make sure to tell her every day how much I love her and how thankful I am for the family she gave me. I also know that I still have a lot to teach my kids about life, and they are the most amazing boys anyone could ask for. If it wasn't for them, I probably wouldn't be here anymore. Story 23. Ecstasy. 25 years ago, my ex-boyfriend and I broke up, who I was deeply in love with. I was estranged from my parents. Dad had substance abuse issues, mom kind of abandoned everyone, etc. I was in my early 20s and deeply depressed. The first time I tried ecstasy, with loving friends, it brought me out of my depression and helped me see the sun again. Story 24. Preventing a best friends and realizing she was the only reason I hadn't gotten even worse. Just starting the upswing, but it gave me a good wake-up call on the fact I need shit to change now, or else that risks maybe being me if something goes very wrong. Couple that with some good music, Konoha by Juice, and it made me change enough habits to the point where I'm in a still not great spot, but it's survivable. Transferring universities might help too. Massive QOL upgrade, and with my knee being rehabbed and a location change, I can both climb and go back to competitive mountain bike racing. Story 25. I just got sick and tired of it. I wallowed in and out of cyclical depression for years. Decades. At its worst, it was so paralyzing and horrible that I couldn't function at all for weeks at a time. It took me many years to even admit that I was depressed at all to anyone else. And after having it used against me repeatedly by people I thought I could trust, many more years to even try to address it. Finally, I realized that my life had passed me by, and if I wanted to have any pleasure in what remained of it, I needed to all my excuses and just start moving despite it. Story 26. Inheriting a bit of money when my grandpa died, which allowed me to pay off debts and stop worrying about how I'm going to survive. To this day, I fully believe if that didn't happen, I probably would either be massively depressed still or have offed myself. Granted, the money wasn't a huge amount, but it at least got me out of a rough spot. After that point, it was close friends and getting a dog that ultimately helped me become remotely like a person again. TBH, my deep, dark depression was fueled massively by my environment and life situation. So much easier to manage once you've removed yourself from it and started fresh. I'd never wish anything like it to anyone else, save for a few humanoid monsters who have proven themselves unworthy of the air they breathe. Story 27. My dad. He has kidney disease, yet he still gets up every day despite the pain and has the audacity to laugh and enjoy himself, helping his own mother, who is going through a tough time. You don't feel the need to complain as much when someone you love is going through something far worse than you, and they're still living their life. Suddenly, my situation didn't seem as dire as I thought. Story 28. A spouse who loves me truly and deeply and needs me. My cats, I love them so much. My kids, they're grown now, but I still love being in their lives. My shed. I have a very modest but proper work facility where I can go and work on things. I quit drinking and smoking. I walk or bike to work most days. I heat with wood that I cut, split, and stack myself by hand. I sleep in a hammock, meaning I get more and better quality sleep. I get plenty of vegetables in my diet. I have done a shitload of work on myself to face up to the things that depressed me, to make changes where I could, to recognize what depression has stolen from me and continues to steal from me, to acknowledge my feelings calmly, to, if not let go of, to at least loosen my grip slightly on my deep sorrows and regrets. Limit social media, especially early in the morning and late at night. I try to stay active enough that I come to my meals hungry, and I go to bed tired. They say gratitude is important to having a happy life. And I find that when I sit down to eat, actually hungry, and lie down to sleep really spent from being active, I don't have to work very hard at being grateful. I just feel it. It comes easily. Treat yourself like a beloved animal. Your pet needs to feel safe, warm, happy, loved, well-fed, and cared for. So do you. You have a lot of love to give yourself. All that said, it never does truly go all the way away forever. But it does go most of the way away for periods of now, sometimes days on end. Enough that sometimes I feel truly happy and at peace, real peace, a quiet, reflective peace that runs deep. I didn't have that before. I hope this reaches whomever needs it and does some good in this hard world. Story 29. Occupy my mind on a specific goal and take advantage of it to improve my diet. Since I was not thinking about eating what gave me pleasure as an escape from reality, little by little later, I incorporated exercise little by little, and when I realized it, I had better habits, food, and I exercised. Depression is generally related to food and physical activity. One causes the other. If you break the cycle in some way, you will be able to get ahead. That helped me feel better mentally. I still have bad days, but that depressive state will tell me 1 to 3 days. Not like before when it was weeks in the same situation, even months. Story 30. A lot of people say that life is worth living. I didn't think so, and I still don't. A life is worth loving. The love I had for my kids kept me going to work to support. I love people. I love flowers in the springtime. Tiny flowers. This does not mean that I love my life or myself or my circumstances, but I love deeply. And when I love, I see things differently. It makes me want to be in the moment. It makes me happy. That helped me continue. I was dealing with grief. I still am every day. And I love every day. I loved that I felt so deeply that loss that I was supposed to get over in 4 months did not get better. I learned to respect the love I give and my presence in people's life. I learned that I care so much. I learned that I love people just the way they are. I love feeling the rawness of love. Living is hard. Loving gives it meaning. I did join grief support groups. I didn't follow up with therapy or anything as people I knew told me to do. Grief was something. However, if you don't know why you are depressed, do seek the support that you need. I knew that I was in a very dark place and struggled with many symptoms of depressions. However, I made a conscious effort to sit with the pain I felt, and I still sit with it. I'm glad I did, but I understand that for others this can be tricky or not advisable. Story 31. I couldn't leave the house, but I braved up and made it to the doc. Started venlafaxine, which after 3 weeks weakened the shadow just barely enough for me to start squeezing in wins. Then the wins, stacked with the venlafaxine, produced more wins very slowly over time. Naturally, these actual wins allowed me to start squeezing in feelings of purpose, few and far between, and I really focused on those moments, understanding what actions cause them, etc. I found that purpose is produced through primal things like training hard, socializing, and taking risks, and that's where I'm at. From there, it just becomes a lifelong journey of following what actions cause those feelings of purpose. Keeping your habits in check so you don't chemically dip back into depression, and just balancing it and learning as much as you can. It's a very long journey that's very worth it, and will be traveled a lot of times, probably within a lifetime, so may as well try to learn it. Story 32. At my lightest, the depression feels like a backpack. I can't take it off and it's always there, but I can carry it. At my darkest, the backpack was too heavy to carry on my own. This is where I realized I needed to get help. I wasn't sure where to start. When you're here, you'll know it when you don't know where to even begin if someone offers to help. I have severely treatment-resistant depression, and I was looking at every non-pill related option because I felt as though I tried them all. Nothing helped. Until I tried something called TMS. It's funny because some people feel a completely life-changing shift a few sessions in. For me, it was a daily session over the course of 6 weeks. I wasn't sure if I was feeling better until I started to notice the little things. I went a few hours without feeling like I wanted to die and realized it. It's been 8 years and I still see the benefits almost daily. I don't think I knew how bad I was until I did the intake assessment over the phone. I'll never forget that call because my mom was in the car with me, and I distinctly remember pausing to answer when I was rating my symptoms when it came to ideation, and I lied. I knew my mom knew I was lying too. Don't give up. You are not beyond help and it will get better. I remember how it feels like it was yesterday, and I wish future you could tell you the same. Of course, I was fortunate to have an incredibly supportive family and friends. However, I lived alone with my dog. My dog became the only reason I got out of bed in the morning. I got on a really strict routine of giving him a special bone at the same time once a day, first thing in the morning before anything else. This helped me tremendously because even now, years later, on days where I feel low or not, he still moseys over to nudge me awake, and it's a great way to start the day. Get a pet to teach you how to give and receive love unconditionally. Having something to pull yourself away from the existential dread is so crucial. Therapy, hear me out. I never was someone who was willing to consider this route. Oddly enough, one of my favorite true crime podcasts changed my perspective, and I gave it a shot. I was extremely lucky to immediately vibe with my therapist, and I've seen her at least every 2 weeks for the last 7 years. This changed my life in ways I never would have expected, and I can't recommend it enough. Give it a shot and don't give up hope until you link up with someone who's a good fit. Keep going. Story 33. Weed for a time. It helped me bear it until I had a real chance to move on from it. Then that crutch started holding me down because I couldn't stop numbing even after I didn't really need to anymore. I think the ultimate life raft is community. Once I had the strength and desire to pursue it, it was the only thing that gave me the energy I needed to start moving again. Story 34. Absolutely my pets. I've grown old and my friends, most of which are younger, have all moved on. I tried to keep up with them, but that hasn't worked. I also had health issues that has stopped me from doing the hobbies and all that I enjoy. My cats always kept me going, and then I made the best decision ever. I adopted a 5-year-old dog from the animal shelter. I'm finally feeling joy and hope again, and it's all because of that dog. Story 35. Nothing's really saving me at the moment. There are people, but I don't have a constant in my life to really rely on. And when the memories come crashing in, it just becomes my hell. The only reason why I'm not dead yet is because I haven't found a good enough time to do it, and there's still a tiny bit of hope left in me. Not a lot, but enough to at least make me think about tomorrow. Story 36. My boyfriend. And I don't mean this in the like I rely on him for happiness kind of way. It's way, way more than that. But I was very much an alcoholic, had no friends, an abusive family, was a fresh college dropout. He accepted me for everything I was in that moment and didn't expect me to be anything else. He showed me a way of living that was healthier, and I grew to become a happier person through his guidance. Story 37. My dog. Found out my BF of 10 years, he 33, me 30, slept with an 18-year-old, 18 by 3 weeks BTW, and that he had been paying hookers $400 a pop for full-service sex while I paid for everything for years. And I mean everything. I left home, took my dog Bug, because even though she was ours, she was mine. I paid for her. I took her to puppy school all on my own for 8 weeks. I trained her, I feed her, I walked her, all while he plays videos games and tried to find a job. Now I'm not happy by any means. I feel my life is wasted, or 10 years of it was, and I'm not sure how I'm meant to go about my life. Story 38. My dog. When I was in the worst depression and PTSD episode of my life, I fostered her and ended up foster failing. When my alarms went off in the morning and I didn't have the drive to get up, she would paw me to get out of bed. I wanted her to have the best food, so I started cooking for her and me. She would just have the unseasoned. Every night we would share an apple and peanut butter and watch TV. During summers, we'd go through a whole watermelon in a week. I went out on walks again. She's a very unique-looking dog and she gets stopped all the time. It helped me manage my social anxiety again and be less afraid of people. She cuddled me. During anxiety attacks, she'd come lay on my chest and help calm me down. The first week I had her, I was in the tub bawling and she came in and put her paws on the edge and just looked at me with so much concern. I don't think I would have made it out of that time frame without her. She truly saved my life. Giving her an extra treat right now after writing this. Story 39. I'm in a depressive spiral. That's definitely one of the worst I've ever had. The past 6 months or so have been absolute hell. One of my partners got to the point where I had to break up with her, despite how much she told me she loved me. She was dating someone else like 2 weeks later. There's a lot more with her, but I don't have the energy to go into it. My grandfather, essentially my father figure in life, died in November. One of my 2 nesting partners is possibly, not for sure, the 3 of us may move to a new state, moving to the UK. My chronic pain issue has been really bad. My grandfather promised me his house most of my life, and my mom sold it to my cousin. Almost all of my friends, the closest included, have phased me out of their lives. Honestly, this is maybe half of what's been going on since the fall. I feel so low. Every day my back wakes me up from how bad it hurts. I apply for jobs I know I'm not going to get. When my partners are working, which is most of the time, I'm sitting here and trying to keep my mind occupied. I'm trying to get better at photography, and I do enjoy it, but I'm pretty bad at it still. Nobody replies to texts when I try and start conversations unless they want someone to vent or complain to because they know I'll listen. I try joining Discords, and even though I'm faking being happy and outgoing and happy to meet them, everybody just ignores me, even in small ones. I don't know, I'm sorry for whining. I just feel so alone and so sad, and I know none of this is going to change. The main reason I'm still here is because I know one of my partners will do the same if I did. I can't do that to her. That said, if anyone wants to make an internet friend, if you'll actually want to chat and such, feel free to DM me. The amount of stir-crazy I'm getting is starting to really get to me. Story 40. I've come to realize that I'm the only one who can pull myself up, both figuratively and literally. It's important for me to get out of my head and focus on how to make myself happier. I've started getting back into my routine of going to the gym, enjoying books, and playing my game, among other activities. It has been quite challenging, but I've realized that I am the one responsible for my own well-being. I've also begun to adopt a more positive mindset by looking for the small things that make me smile. I try to do a positive affirmation once or twice a week. The positive bear on TikTok is brilliant and always so upbeat. Hope this in some way helps. I also find Reddit is a pretty positive place. Story 41. 2 things finally helped wake me up enough to not off myself. The first was when as a teenager who used to self-harm. It was always after a nice bout of mental abuse from my parents and subsequent overwhelming emotions. This time I was in the kitchen. My parents had left the house for a couple hours. For some reason, they always did that after they verbally or physically had a talk with me. My little brother, who is much younger than me, had a friend over in the living room. I had a knife to my wrist and was a few cuts down when I thought to myself that I should just finish it. I was ready. My dad and stepmom were mentally abusive and manipulative, sometimes physically, depending on how angry my dad was, which was often. I was angry and sad and hurting, and I wanted them to find me. I wanted them to be sorry when they realized that they hurt me so much that I didn't want to live anymore. I wanted to punish them. Then I heard my baby brother laughing with his friend, and I burst into tears because I realized if I did what I was going to do, it would have been him to find me. I love my little brothers more than anything. I couldn't do that to him. I couldn't let him be the one to find me. So I held off for a few years with my new motivation to keep going for my brothers if I couldn't do it for me. The second time, it had been a few years since then, I was back in that place mentally. I was thinking about it again. I think my second brother knew. He's my best friend. He got me to start talking, and I asked him something like, maybe it would be better if I wasn't around, right? And he looked me in the eye and said, if you go ill follow, and I felt my whole world fall away. I knew he meant it. The thought of him not being here because of me devastated me. It gave me my motivation back, and after that time, I started putting all the strength I had into trying. The more I kept trying, the easier it got. Some days are easier than others. Some days aren't easy at all. Sometimes there's a lot of days that are very, very hard. I don't think you can ever just heal from depression. I think you just do the best you can. Story 42. I forced myself to go out to a gaming store and played some Warhammer with a couple of strangers. I hadn't played in a couple of years, but it was always my favorite hobby before the depression hit. It took a genuinely incredible mental effort, but I remember thinking, this is your last shot. If you don't do this, you'll wither away and die. I just remember rolling the dice and talking to these really friendly strangers and thinking, this isn't as scary as I thought. I'm glad I did this. And just like that, the entire rationale underlying my depression vanished. Engaging with life felt good. I didn't want to die anymore. I wanted to paint my miniatures and keep playing and meeting people. I lost touch with the two guys I played with, but I am so eternally grateful to them. Story 43, Zoloft. Sounds cliche, but medication gave me enough of a leg up to start working on the parts of my life that I was actually able to change. Once those parts started getting better and I had less focus on them, I was able to keep motivated and finally went to therapy where they helped me confront my demons and taught me a lot of techniques to confront my negative thought patterns. Was it a one-stop, cure-all, solve all my problems solution? Definitely not. It did, however, soften the edges enough I could break the endless cycle and start thinking clearly. It was like I was in this darkness and couldn't find my way out, and Zoloft cleared the fog. I was still in a dark place, but I could at least see the path and the way out. Story 44. It wasn't my choice. Modern medicine and surgeons saved me. I tried to end my life as an addict and woke up a week later in a hospital with a new liver. It didn't magically heal my depression and addictions, but was, of course, a life-changing wake-up call. That was 9 years ago this week. I've been sober and clean since. Life isn't perfect, a delusional goal, really, but I'm trying. The last few years have been difficult with physical health challenges and isolation due to COVID and my general habit of withdrawing socially when I'm struggling. I'd had a lot of therapy before, but doing it sober changed everything. I've been properly evaluated, diagnosed, and medicated for multiple mental health disorders that I was clearly attempting to self-medicate in the past. Working to understand my mind more had helped a lot. Been in a dark, rough patch for a while now, so I've just started antidepressants again after the last try 15 years ago. Only 5 weeks in, but they're helping. I weirdly miss crying, the occasional appropriate one, not crying all the time. And I'm still on the fence about kind of feeling numb to all emotions generally, but the reprieve from the constant weight of feeling like I'm almost touching that most dark place again is relieving. Gonna try stick it out for a while, but determined to get off the meds when I find balance again. For now, a tiny spark of hope is growing. Story 45. An article titled 6 Harsh Truths That Will Make You a Better Person. It is blunt and brutal, but it empowered me. I could change my life. I was the only one holding myself back. I grinded and worked my ass off, pushing through the darkness because what else was I going to do? By some miracle, I made it into nursing school despite 2 failed semesters hobbling my GPA. My first day of nursing school, the light broke through, a whole new world. That article shifted my worldview. I wasn't a powerless person things just happened to. I was responsible and able to change my life. Now I'm a nurse practitioner, something I never imagined I would have in my dark days. ETA. When I was in the middle of nurse practitioner school, working every weekend and doing classes and clinical, when things were pushing me to the limit, I would say to myself, it's not forever, it's just for right now. It's not forever, it's just for right now. Story 46. I made a set of cards called negative thought cards. Every time I would have a recurring negative thought, egyo, if it hasn't happened by now, it never will. I would write down the thought on one side and then research the more accurate truths on the other side, e.g., if that were true, I would never be able to learn or change at all. Have I ever learned anything? If so, then this isn't true. Every morning and night, I would reread the cards by feeling the negative perspective and then force myself to think of the correct and more life-affirming perspective until it became second nature. Then one day I realized that I did not feel the negative thoughts were anywhere near accurate anymore. Story 47. I hope it won't sound anything like spiritual enlightenment. All of this is a product of finally giving F** about me and my emotions. I didn't do it, so my depression made me to do it. What helped me is me fundamentally refusing to believe that this is what my life is going to look like. A voice in my head that actively protested it, despite being drowned in black abyss of depression. Letting go of everything, my plans, my ambitions, my aspirations, basically anything that was driving me to persuade things in my life and driving my decisions. Then going to my ground zero, where I felt safe, physically, economically, and emotionally, more or less, and trying to find again things that I can do that won't trigger the shit. The moment I gave up everything and accepted that I'm laying low as I can with my emotions and environment, I found the relief of off the horrible feeling of depression. And then with everything I did, it was like finding my way in a swamp. Try and consider my each step. Does it feel good to me or does it take me to a dark place? On the way the therapy unfolded, why those things took me to the dark place, and I've learned to deal with it or recognize and stay away from it. Hope you'll find your way out of the dark.